This is JailTalk, the official podcast of the Texas Jail Association. Here is your host, Aimee Crockett.
Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to this episode of JailTalk. And today I'm here with Melvin Bowser. Melvin is a trainer for the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. And I'm going to let you, I know a lot about you, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Talk about your background. What have you done? How are you the subject matter expert I've selected for today?
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. I worked at Brazos County Sheriff's Department from 1997 until 2020 when I retired to take the job that I have now. And while I was working there, around 2007, we created a crisis intervention team to go out into the community and deal with mental health problems. And I was one of the initial members on the team, and I did that for about 3 years, and then I got promoted to run that team, and I ran it for another 2.5 years. And then in 2000, and I did that, and then I went back to work in the jail. And then in 2015, after the Sandra Bland incident, we got with our local mental health authority, and they sent a person over to work with us in the jail, and I became his liaison. So even though it wasn't my intention, once I got back to the jail, I continued to do mental health work throughout. And I know this is a little on the personal side, but I also have a daughter with severe problems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you know, in the training that we've done over the years, we always ask a lot of our participants their why. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting how many people that want to be in this area of this job have someone that's connected to them that has some kind of mental illness or some kind of other disability that really draws them in to want to be a part of that. So I want to go back to when you said y'all started a crisis intervention team. Mm-hmm. I believe our audience is mostly jail people or law enforcement people, but for someone who's just found this podcast and doesn't really know what that is, crisis intervention team, that's kind of a buzzword these days, CIT. You hear that all the time. So what would that look like if an agency was, what are they encountering? What is the goal of a crisis intervention team? What do they do?
Okay, so the original goal of a crisis intervention team is to help jails not have to house people that shouldn't be in jail. That's the original intent. Mm-hmm. So what we would do, the way we were set up, is we worked closely with our mental health authority, and whenever there was any kind of call, and we also worked with the local police departments, and whenever there was any kind of call that came out that was mental health related in any way, suicidal person, what are some of the other ones? Just
when they're combative and resistant.
Disturbances. We went into a lot of disturbances. Yeah. People that were combative, but they weren't really doing anything like horribly
nothing
wrong
criminal,
that they had to go to jail for. They would try to get us to divert them into whatever care they needed. And so that was kind of the start of it.
And the fact that you guys were police officers, you had the ability to pivot.
Right, we could go either way with it.
You could go either way with it, which is why law enforcement kind of was the selection for that. And I know we've heard it over and over, and it's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. And we heard it in our opening speaker. If you get the chance, our keynote will be recorded from this conference, and you can watch her. She says it too. Jails have become the de facto mental institutions.
Yep.
You hear the term criminalizing mental illness because there's nowhere else for them to go. And we could talk about the number of, from the 60s, the number of mental institution beds that we had versus what we have now. And that's a whole different topic.
Oh, yeah.
We'd
be here all day for that.
We'd be here all day for that. But the go-to then is the police. And when we talk about this in our very beginning in jail school, that's what we say. You know, when someone is acting irrationally, their behavior is uncomfortable at the grocery store or the 7-Eleven or whatever, the convenience store, they call the police. Mm-hmm. And so your beginning experience was on the street with people in the public.
Right.
And then you come into the jail and they're still there.
Right.
And you then at Brazos County worked with them.
Yeah. And then the Crisis Management Institute of Texas developed a program along with a lot of other people. I don't want them to get the credit.
Correct.
But with a lot of people came together and decided that it would be good if we had something like that designed for inside the jail. Because once a person gets there and you can't send them anywhere else for treatment, now you have to help them. Mm-hmm. And so we're now developing crisis intervention teams for jails.
Absolutely. The JMHO program. Yeah. And it's interesting because that did come about from knowing there was a need for it. And you went to probably the original crisis intervention training way back. And that was really patrol based because that's where you first encounter these subjects. Is they're on the street, they're irrational behavior, they're not listening, they're not responding to any requests from anybody, so the police become involved.
Right.
And all of that training was pretty geared toward on the street and in the squad car, and we saw a real need for that inside the jail because it's different.
Oh yeah.
And you can't just get them to jail, drop them off, and be done. It's every day. And those crises continue every day. A lot of these people stay in a bad episode for a long amount of time. And so, that training was developed, and it's I'll plug it because I love that training for anyone from jails that's listening. It is something that the Correctional Management Institute started, promoted it in collaboration with a lot of other agencies, but they still support it. And so you help facilitate that training as a member of the Texas Commission on Jail Standards, right. And you'll help anybody that wants to put that training on. And then once those have been through that training, they offer the opportunity to attend the Master Trainer course that is at no charge, that is held in Huntsville about annually, and then those people are able. So we're kind of building this and continuing this, and so that's really grown, and it's a great program, and I have a lot of personal history with it, but I want to ask you about that. So you get somebody from a training perspective. Let's talk about the students right now, the officers. You get somebody in day one and they start receiving, basically drinking from a fire hose, all of this information, all this training on different types of mental illness and different ways to handle it. And this program is pretty scenario based. Right. I'm curious what you've seen in some people. Maybe day one you're like, I don't know about this guy. And then by the end of the program, what have you seen in successes in people?
We had one in one of the counties that we went to where there was one of the guys in the class that he was so anti-mental health help that by Thursday, we got to a point where we had to pull him off to the side and say, hey, man, if you're not into this, don't waste your time or ours. And the next week after we finished the class, I got a phone call from his supervisor saying that he went and dealt with a situation in the jail the next day after the class and was able to de-escalate the situation and get the person the help they need. And just that quick, he had made a turnaround just because he actually tried what we taught him and it worked.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I see a lot of stories like that.
And I love to have the students come back and say, I got to use that class today. I got to use that class today. So our goal in that, if we're able to do that, what are we not doing? What is the result from that? The benefit?
Well, I mean, we're not fighting. We're not getting hurt. We're not getting someone else hurt. We are not doing a bunch of extra paperwork for uses of force. We're not having to deal with somebody out for 8 weeks because they hurt their knee in a situation.
Absolutely.
So we're just making it easier for everybody.
Absolutely,
for everybody. It's not just for the inmate. It makes it easy for everybody.
Everything you see on TV is the good stuff. They don't put those 20, 30, 45-minute conversations on the TV show where you talk the person down and they willingly go and do what you want them to do. If it's take a shower, take their medicine, go back in their cell, any of those things. Do you think, based on those kind of behaviors and in the history, your history, do you think that what have you seen in the amount of people with mental illness? Are we better or worse than we were 20 years ago?
You know, it's a tricky one. It goes up and down. I think actually what happens is people will, like everybody will buy into it, and then they will start treating people a little better, and then they'll get laxed. Just like we talk about how people with mental illness will a lot of times stop taking their medication because they feel better. We kind of do the same thing in the way we treat them. Everything is working better, so we can kind of slack off now, and then everything goes bad again. So we kind of cycle back and forth. I would say right now we're doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Have you seen a change in, and not that you're a diagnostician or anything, but one of the things that I've seen and learned in our trainings is the types of mental illness, not necessarily types, but there are a lot more ways that people are coming to into our custody with mental illness younger these days. Do you see that? The drug-induced psychosis and things like that. People are doing things to themselves almost these days.
There's a lot of drug-induced psychosis. There's a lot of people with trauma, just having a traumatic background that is causing them to have a hard time dealing with everyday.
Yeah, so I don't know if the numbers increased, but it does seem like we deal with more
Yeah.
now. And so training our officers. I think having a CIT team is really good. It's difficult to designate certain people from a staffing perspective.
Yeah, administratively, it's kind of hard to navigate it.
Right, because then you want a group of people that respond to these situations, but you really we've got standards we have to meet. You guys, you jail commission,
Right.
We have standards that we have to meet, and so finding that balance and actually creating a team where you have a staff that's well trained, that handles it well, and can respond. It's difficult, and so where a lot of agencies want it, I know some have more resources, are larger agencies, and can do that. A lot of times I've seen where they wear a different uniform so they look different, because that visual, the consumer will respond differently to that officer because they know they're going to treat them differently. And they really do. And those situations where they can just sit down, and we've had real successes at our agency, and the supervisors are proud to come tell me that they've de-escalated situations, they've handled situations. And again, like you said, it's all the reduction in use of forces, reduction in injuries to the staff and to the inmate, and lack of less paperwork and all those things. And I really think it gives the officers some tools that they don't have to pull a trigger or squeeze the top on something. It's a tool, a verbal tool. Yeah, and it makes a big difference for them. So I want to ask about some situations in your background. Give me some examples of, because everybody wants to hear the good stuff, where you have in your personal experience, or if you've seen someone handle situations like inside the jail. I know you've got some good ones.
Some of them are pretty good. Some of them can't be talked about on a podcast.
Absolutely.
But I mean, they all ended well though. So let me think of a good one we had. Okay, we had this one guy that came in one time, and I don't know what all was going on with him, but he was completely shut down. He wouldn't do anything for the booking. They put him in a holding cell. He stayed there for a while, and it wasn't my story. It was one of the guys that worked for me at the time. And we called him in there, and we were like, "Hey, go talk to this guy, see if there's anything you can do to help him get through this process." And so he goes over, and when he's there talking to him, the guy holds his hand out, and so my crisis deputy took his hand. And as long as they were holding hands, he would go through the entire booking process. Whenever that contact was lost, the guy would just shut back down.
Really?
He never got violent. He never caused anybody any problems. It was just, he felt connected to this officer. And a lot of times that's what you get. You'll get somebody that they feel connected with this officer that they're dealing with because they know this person is going to look out for them. They're going to take care of them. They're not going to give them just free stuff,
right?
But they're going to help them through the process and make them feel more comfortable. And that's kind of, that goes along with what we talk about when we say trauma-informed care. And it makes a big difference. And it just makes your day easier when you deal with something like that.
But in the big picture from the outside looking in, you're like, you got to hold a guy's hand. I'm not holding anybody's hand. Yeah. He's going to do what I say.
Yeah.
And all you do in that situation is wind up with more resistance, and it becomes physical.
Exactly.
And so stuff like that, my history goes back to 1990, and the same people were there with the same situations, a lot less training, and a lot less options for treatment and medication and things. Right. And we could solve things with a cigarette.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you could solve a crisis with a cigarette.
Okay, I got one of those for you. If you want to hear that
I'm ready. Yeah.
So we had this guy and this was before I went to any kind of mental health training, and I didn't really know how to deal with people or anything like that, as far as that goes. And he had schizophrenia, and he was in real bad shape. Like, he was really sick. And we would go out and deal with him when I was on patrol, and it was just the fight. Like, you were looking for the fight when you got out there, because that's what he was going to give you. And and one day we get him into my car, and we're driving along, and he goes, "Hey, I smell a cigarette." And I was like, "Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I smoke, and it's probably on my clothing." He was like, "I need one. I need one." And so I was like, "Okay." So I gave him a cigarette on the way to jail, and he immediately calmed down. He became like a completely different person. So we took him in, and he stayed there for like a couple of days, and then they realized that he needed to go get some mental health treatment, and that his charge wasn't that extravagant. So we got that all set up, and the transport deputy got ready to take him, and I said, "Hey, why don't you go to the store real quick before you come in here and buy a cheap pack of cigarettes, and you'll fight him a lot less on the way to the hospital." And he did that. And he said he had to keep the windows rolled down in the back a little bit because it was just billowing out like a Cheech and Chong movie. But no problems at all. No problems.
And now tell me, what year was that probably?
Oh, that was 90s, late 90s, like 99.
It's so interesting, because I know there have to be people that are like, "What? You can't do that." But it's, you have to adapt. And when you didn't have the tools or the skills back then, and you just kind of have to do what you can do to get along. Yeah, it's very interesting. We have those conversations with our staff, and I think anybody watching this who is in the business, they've got their own stories. They're like, oh yeah. If you're not in the business, you're like, what? You can't give them cigarettes. That would, that's this. It's bad for their health. It's all, no. This is good for them. This is what works best. And I know in one of the counties I worked at previously, there was a guy that would do anything as long as you gave him a peanut butter sandwich, or if you had female staff come talk to him, not in any kind of sexual way or inappropriate way.
That's just what he was comfortable with. He
responded to a woman's voice, a woman. And if you had a female, he would not be disrespectful. He would go along. Of course, there were always guys right there, in case, because he was a big guy. But I'll give I won't say what agency, but if you got Sammy a sandwich, everybody knows what I'm talking about. He would do what you needed him to do. And so, again, these are people who probably would not be in jail had we the space for them somewhere else.
Right.
So they're not a normal inmate or typical suspect. And so in different situations, you have to adapt differently. And so I don't know, everybody, when you sit around the Thanksgiving table and you work in a jail, the family wants to hear the stories.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what it's like to look at it from the outside, because I've been in it for so long. But it's and I'll tell you, for me, one that we dealt with very regularly in 1990. In 2015, I was back working in the jail, and I will give her the name Jones. That's not her name.
Right.
Somebody was mentioning, oh man, they were complaining about an inmate that was in a cell. I said, who is it? And they go, that's old lady Jones. And I was like, I know that name. And I went in there and I looked and I said, okay, hold on. If that's old lady Jones, then I'm old lady Crockett. So I'm gonna need y'all to stop, because we were in our 20s when we started this criminal justice journey together.
Right.
But I'll tell you, the hard part for me, as far as I had, progressed in my career, was that in that time, so 26 years, she had not been to prison. She was not a felon, but she was still coming to jail. She was still criminal trespassing. She was still walking around unclothed around parts of the city and, scaring people. And that's the hard part, is the only answer for her was to lock her up. And again, that's a whole nother podcast. But for people to understand, when we deal with a lot of these situations, there's no other option for us or for them. And so to develop these programs and to develop these skills makes a huge difference. So tell me, when you first started doing this and you were doing it on the street and the people that worked in the jail, what have you seen? And especially because, and if you want to talk a little bit about the Sandra Bland and just progression, where were we and where are we now as jail staff?
I'll go even farther back than me. It all started back in 1987 with Memphis. I think it was the local police department. Memphis PD went out on a call, and the guy was suicidal, and they had no idea how to handle it. Like, they just didn't know what to do. And so they end up shooting and killing him. And then they all got together. When I say they all, I mean Memphis PD, the local university, subject matter experts from, throughout the mental health field, and was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so that's how crisis intervention training started. And so over the years it developed, and it kind of eased its way into Texas in the late 90s and early 2000s. And that's when we started developing programs for out on the streets. And then, like I said, Brazos County, we didn't catch up until 2007. But it's overall, you can see that there's a difference in the way we treat things. I was actually having a conversation with a couple of guys this morning, and they were talking about how they were glad we didn't have video cameras in cars when they were on the streets. And I'm like, I'm glad you're still not on the streets, because, because when you go out there and you treat people like that on the street, and then you bring them to the jail, that jailer is now stuck with somebody who hates him just because he thinks about the person that just brought him in. Yeah. And like, it just makes, for the people who have to, as I always say, live with them, mm-hmm. it makes it hard, mm-hmm. right? So I'm glad to see that there's a lot of progression. I still think that we need more.
Sure.
I think we need more crisis intervention specialists out there.
I agree.
Because what we're doing now is we're training every single police officer as soon as they come out of the academy, or while they're in the academy now. And, a lot of them are learning how to run and gun. And then all of a sudden you tell them, oh, yeah, here's this touchy-feely stuff. Mm-hmm. And so they just kind of reject that part of it. But I think we need more specialists, more specialization. But other than that, we are progressing pretty well.
I agree with that. And for those who, again, are not from this business, to work inside a jail in the state of Texas, you 18 years old.
Yeah.
And so we have people with limited life experience coming to work that are supervising people that are they're in a bad way. And mm-hmm. so we're doing the best we can. They get, and from the Sandra Bland Act, of course, we've increased the training hours that they get initially with their licensing training. And then through the Correctional Management Institute, and all the other collaborative partners there, we've increased this opportunity for this JMHO, Jail Mental Health Officer
right.
training. And that, we take that all over the state as much as we can. And, but still, we have to acknowledge who's supervising. They are being supervised by people who a lot of times they've never encountered someone like this. Maybe, depending on their life experience, but I think that makes a big difference too. So yeah, the training I think has been really good to get us far. But like you said, crisis intervention specialists, I think is really.
I think we need more. One of the things I always say, since you were talking about 18-year-olds coming mm-hmm. in, what I always say is, if you're in a jail, you need to promote it as quick as possible, because if you become a sergeant, you're supervising people who want to be supervised. If you're a jailer, as they say, just a jailer, you're supervising people who don't want to be supervised and didn't do well with their own parents trying to teach them.
Right.
And you're only 18 years old coming out of high school. So it's a tough situation to be in for a new jailer. So even if they can't handle somebody, at least if they have, somebody that more specializes in it, that can come help them deal with problems, it makes it easier for them to want to come to work every day too.
And I think that there is a kind of a push for some agencies to go ahead and get all of that training right there at the beginning when they
right.
go to jail school.
Right.
And like you said, just like with the police officers in the academy, let's give them all this training right now, and they're drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, I think it's just too much. Yeah,
it's too much.
You're dumping too much on them.
And then the training kind of stops. There's no further training. I'm not trying to get
typically
anything.
No.
I'm not. Don't talk to the legislatures about me, but that is it. Kind of stops right. there, and so retraining and learning more and honing those skills. I always say you guys have to go out to the range and qualify at least once a year.
Yeah.
If you do that with that weapon, what about this tool? We need to hone those skills as well.
That's actually what I tell my classes when I go teach a suicide prevention class. I'm like, yeah, you might not want to do this every year, but when you need it, it'll be there. Just like if you have to go shoot every year.
I want to segue to that. You're the mental health trainer for the commission. So talk about some of the training that you do. What do you do as a member of the commission for the counties?
This is a good time for you to ask that question.
Great, Melvin. Glad that worked for you.
When I came into it, my role was to teach the what was called the 4900 course, which was the mental health for jailers. It was just your basic run-of-the-mill, everyday 8-hour class to teach you a little bit about mental health and understanding what you're supposed to do. And so that program the necessity for people to have that program ended at the beginning of 2020, or in August of 2021 at the new cycle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since then, I've been teaching specifically for the commission. I teach suicide prevention. It's a 4-hour class just because agencies have to have, training every year, like we were just talking about. And then I teach an intellectual and developmental disabilities class that I developed. And those are the main 2 classes that I have. The reason I was excited about you asking me about this is because 2 days ago, I just got me a new 4-hour de-escalation class approved.
Oh.
And I'm also in the process of helping T. Cole and the Texas Veteran Commission produce a new class that's going to have to be taken by all jailers on dealing with veterans. And then the jail mental health officer course.
Right.
All the stuff I do with that.
So this, what do we know about the veterans training that you're talking about?
We know that I've made an outline.
Okay.
And that I've turned it over to them, and that they seem to like it, and they're working on whatever tweaks they need to make to it so that they can roll it out. The only other thing we need to know about it at this point is the 24 hours of training that jailers now get when they first come in. Mm-hmm. 2 hours of veteran training from that is going to have to be squeezed into that training.
Oh, in the mental health training?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then everybody who's already a jailer will have to have at least, we're going with 2 hours. There was nothing specified in the mandate. But we're setting it up to where it's going to be at least 2 hours of training for all jailers that already work in.
And what's the deadline to have that done?
The end of this training cycle. So 2027.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be extended just because that's a quick turnaround for a class that hadn't even been developed yet.
Right.
So it may be extended, but if you're looking at it, operate under the assumption that it won't be extended and just go ahead and try to get it as soon as they roll it out.
And you're available if they reach out to the commission or to you that you can.
I'm always available, Aimee. I'm always available.
Who manages your schedule? You must be really busy.
Unfortunately, I do, and that's why I laugh when I say I'm always available.
I'm telling you, honestly, Melvin is a tremendous resource. He does. How many jail schools do you help with?
As far as like the jail schools, I help with 3 right now.
Okay. You come in and do the mental health piece there.
Yeah.
It's just good to have a different voice. It's good to have somebody with some real experience that can bring in outside stuff. So I know at Smith County, we really appreciate having you come in and help. And you're always very well received by the class. You're way more fun than me.
I don't know. I've seen you teach.
So the veteran stuff is coming online. You teach the 4900s is good. Mm-hmm. You've got the suicide prevention. You're here at the conference. I want to talk a little bit more because we didn't really go into it, but they do go hand in hand, the IDD. Mm-hmm. So you teach IDD, which is?
Intellectual and developmental disabilities.
And that is a pretty heavy subject in jails as well. And why?
It's a heavy subject. It's hard to teach, first of all, because it's really hard to grasp the concept. It's just one of those things that's really hard to grasp unless you deal with someone in your family or something, for years. And I even know people who have someone that, suffers from one of the disabilities in their own household that they have a hard time mm-hmm. dealing with. It's just a really tough topic. So I think it's important though, because and I'm going to just use an example. If you have someone that comes into your jail, like we had a girl one time that came in and she was 17. So we were PREA compliant, so we had to keep her away from the adults, but her level of understanding, her mental capacity, as we usually put it, was that of a 5-year-old. So she had no concept of how anything in a jail works, right? And all the jargon we use, none of that meant anything to her, right? You got somebody that you should be communicating with on a kindergarten level, and you're communicating to her like a convict, mm-hmm. and it just didn't work. And what it caused was many, many uses of force. And she was pretty strong. So during those uses of force, someone usually got hurt. At least one person usually got hurt and was sidelined for a few weeks. And it took us a little while to figure this whole thing out, but we finally figured out, like, we have to communicate with her a certain way. We have to do things with her a certain way. And when we did, the uses of force went from about 4 to 5 a week to none for like the last month and a half, 2 months we had her in our custody.
Wow. But it took something to figure that out.
Yeah.
And you know, they're a more vulnerable population.
Yeah.
They take a lot more supervision wise, and there is a responsibility on the part of the agency to keep them safe.
Right.
And that's in the code.
Yeah.
So man, that's a lot. We've unpacked a lot. I really, really appreciate you sitting down with me today.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a great resource for the commission, and I know that
I appreciate that.
That here in the state of Texas, we're happy to have you. So anyway, I hope you've learned something today. I sure have. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.
This has been Jail Talk, the official podcast of the Texas Jail Association. To learn more about the Texas Jail Association, visit texasjailassociation.com.